Good morning. I just got a comment about these firing of these U.S. attorneys. It kind of something smells rotten to me. They have fired these attorneys for political reasons, but yet we got a U.S. attorney for the Southwest District down here named Johnny Sutton, who appears to be working for the government of Mexico, or at least under Bush's direction for the government of Mexico. We put 2 border agents in prison for lengthy prison terms. And yesterday they also put a deputy sheriff in jail because he shot at a truckload of illegal immigrants. Now, from what I hear is that the Mexican government complained, so Johnny Sutton put the deputy in jail. And I'd like to know what in the world is going on.
Thank you. Bruce Fein, your response.
Justice has to be like Caesar's wife, above suspicion, if it's going to give confidence to the people that the law isn't manipulated for a partisan reason. And one of the reasons why we need sunshine on exactly the circumstances and the motivations for the firings is to make clear to the American people what was behind the discharges. I don't think at present, given all the information, we can be definitive. It may have varied from U.S. attorney to U.S. attorney, but appearances count in the law that don't necessarily count as much at the Commerce Department and otherwise. And I think that this caller's worry and concern about politics in a partisan sense being involved in the selection or removal of U.S. attorneys shows all the need for greater disclosure and insistence that executive privilege not be used to thwart a full investigation of all the information pertinent to those motivations for removing these U.S. attorneys. With regard to the particular issues of whether or not a U.S. attorney has engaged in enough law enforcement concerning immigration violations or not, those in a sense are not partisan. They are simply policy choices that any administration must make. There are limited law enforcement resources, and what you're doing in immigration you can't use to prosecute, say, an antitrust criminal case or health fraud or otherwise. I don't think that is as much concern as politics and particular investigations concerning voting fraud or otherwise as tainting the appearance of justice, if not actual justice.
But before you joined us, we had a gentleman who phoned in and asked me to write down 2 numbers, 8 and 93. And you know what he was referring to. What is the higher number, and what's the difference between what happened last year by the Justice Department and what President Bush did in 2001 when he took office, or President Clinton did in 1993 when he took office, or Ronald Reagan in 1981?
The instances where a president of a new party comes into the White House, where the U.S. attorneys who have been appointed by his predecessor are removed, don't raise any suspicions because it's natural that a president want to have his own U.S. attorneys, as he's entitled in the Constitution, to enforce his law enforcement priorities. For example, President Bush would have child pornography prosecutions as more important, that he'd want to send that message to his U.S. attorneys than perhaps President Clinton. President Clinton might have other priorities out there, maybe prosecuting more violence against women or destruction of health care facilities that offered abortion. That is expected, and there's nothing that suggests anything irregular about president selecting U.S. attorneys of his party as opposed to the others. Same way in which judges come in. A new president comes in, he appoints Republicans more to the trial courts, and the Democrats appoint more Democrats. But here we have a situation that's more irregular. We're in the mid of an administration where there's no turnover of party in the White House. Indeed, you're dealing with U.S. attorneys who were appointed by the same president with the support of senators who are Republican parties or members of Congress. And to discharge all of those creates some suspicion something's afoot that's different than the customary way in which the president has somebody of his own party. And that suspicion is heightened when some of these U.S. attorneys, like the one out in New Mexico, is getting phone calls at his home from a senator from his own state or from a member of Congress. That suggests an irregularity, that perhaps something is concerning a particular investigation is there, not just a policy difference.
And from the letter that he released yesterday, Fred Fielding, again, the White House counsel said this to members of Congress following his discussion with members of the Judiciary Committee, that in the midst of this current debate, the President must remain faithful to the fundamental interest of the presidency and the requirements of the constitutional separation of powers. We wish to reach a reasonable accommodation so as to provide your committees the information they are seeking in a way that will allow this president and future presidents to continue to discharge their constitutional responsibilities effectively. We'll go to Gary, Indiana with the next call. Good morning.